We didn't get a chance to visit with him last week. He was, I think, up in the air somewhere. In an airplane, don't worry, it's not a catapult. Brett Dolan joining us on halftime for a Thursday hit. And where in the world are you today, Brett Dolan?
Well, Bud Walton Arena for now, because we both have the women's basketball game tonight, and then I'll be gone at like 5 a.m. tomorrow for another trip and more baseball. But it's that crazy time of the year that you and I both love, and also it takes a chunk out of our mentality after a while with all the games and all the overlap.
You got a college baseball weekend. You got perfect game. What do you got going next weekend?
Now, this is the big college baseball weekend in Minute Maid, and we have a great field this year. Tennessee and Texas A&M, obviously, they won't play each other. Mississippi State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, Rice, I think, are the teams. So I've got 5 of the 9 games, and we're kind of lucky. MLB Network is picking up a couple, and they're going to take our Friday night game and play it back at, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and then they're going to carry our game Saturday night live on the network, I believe. So going to be a fun weekend of a lot of college baseball indoors, or we can pop the roof, I guess, if it's nice. But always look forward to this event. I think I've been part of it for about, a decade maybe.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I love that ballpark, too. When did they take out Tal's Hill, that goofy mountain in center field, when they first opened the ballpark? And I thought, what are we trying to do here? Why are we creating an injury for people? They did away with that like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, maybe a little longer than that. New ownership took over in 12. I think they left it for a year or two, so maybe 13 or 14-ish. And I think, in fact, when Arkansas played there, and it may have been, was it 2020 during COVID, Heston Kjerstad hit a homer off the batter's eye, which would have been kind of near the hill back then. So I don't know if it would have stayed in play. Probably not with his juice. But I think when Arkansas played there last, that hill had been removed for several years.
Yeah, you think? Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was going to ask a combine question, and Brett, I know you got to see a lot of amazing talent, with your profession, and I was kind of looking over. So you think, well, let's just take a kid from Georgia like the Philadelphia Eagles do, and it seems to be working out. In the last year, the last 2 years, if you think Jalen Carter 2 years ago was a can't miss, had some off the field issues, falls to 9. Brock Bowers, all he did was set all the new rookie tight end records. That being said, who are 2 or 3 guys that you covered this year that you think, man, these guys are can't miss guys this year in the NFL draft?
Well, maybe it's just timely, Matt, but the one guy who I thought was incredible, seeing him the last couple of years, was Abdul Carter, and I guess some news has come out on him in regards to maybe some injury concerns or whatnot, and I don't know what that will do to his draft stock. I'm sure it depends on what the physicals look like, but he was one, so I don't know if we're going to see a few more guys during this combine where whether they get a chance to meet with some of the NFL personnel or whether there's some concerns about their performance or their medicals. But he would have been one at the top of the list. And last year I felt like it was a little bit easier because the guy like Daniels coming out of LSU was exciting, and there was that quarterback conversation. It feels like it's a little bit of a different draft this year, maybe as far as maybe a few more non-position players in there. But Carter would have been one I would have thrown in my top 2 or 3, but I guess we'll see what happens with him and whether or not he falls down the board a little bit.
You think if you need a quarterback and you're choosing between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, do you have an opinion on who it is that you take in front of the other?
I guess if I have to pick one or the other, I might take Ward, and I don't know why. I throw that answer out there. The one thing I think Ward always was a little bit different for me from his style and a little nonchalant, extending plays and maybe making 1 or 2 bad throws over the course of a game. Shedeur Sanders, I saw him early, and when I did see him in person, it was probably one of his worst games. Nebraska shut him down early, and I know he put up some big numbers in his own conference later on in the year. He was at the Shrine Bowl when I was there for that event about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but he did not play in the game. So I think originally maybe the intent was for him to play, but then as he was looked at as a top 1, 2, or 3 pick in the draft, he backed out. So I would probably lean Ward, but I don't do it with great confidence. I think both of them are probably a little bit below some of the quarterbacks that have been taken that high in recent years.
With I was doing a little research, and you look back, I don't know, it was 20-something years ago, but LaDainian Tomlinson was at TCU, and I know running backs are viewed a little bit different, and I don't think Alshon Genty's as good, or they're different style running back than LaDainian Tomlinson is. But, you look what he did at a smaller conference and the records he set, and then was still able to have success. Do you think Alshon Genty is a can't-miss prospect?
I don't know if he's can't miss, but I think he's going to be the rare running back that's taken mid to late first round, possibly. I was always intrigued by him, and maybe I paid a little more attention this year because as a first-time Heisman voter, I felt like I needed to see this kid a couple of times. He has a unique stance. He runs with a determined ability that obviously broke a lot of tackles, a lot of yards after contact. Again, we don't get to see him against power teams a lot. They did play Oregon early in the year, and, of course, they had their playoff game late, but I think he's pretty good. I won't discount him for playing against his conference or his competition. Not a big guy, and again, not everybody has the appetite for taking a running back high in the draft, but I think he certainly has that potential.
Big win basketball last night. Brett had to go into overtime to do it. Sweep Texas. I think you kind of it feels like you had to have that win yesterday. It's just, without ado, down to 7 players. Right now, they're playing. If you're down to 7 and you beat a team when you got to win, I think this team right now, I don't know if they're playing best basketball of the year, but they have an opportunity to. Why do you think they play so well after somebody gets hurt? Because right after Boogie's injury, they go on to beat Kentucky, start this little string of 6 wins in 10 games, and then yesterday you could just see they came out and believed that they could win without Adu Thero.
Well, I think so, and maybe they're just playing better in general over the last month, and I think part of that has to be their defense. Now, they're going to give up some shots at the rim and points in the paint because they really do pressure teams. Even going back to that Auburn game, Phil, I felt like there were times where each of those teams went through a 3-minute stretch where they simply couldn't execute a 10-foot pass around the perimeter. And Arkansas, sometimes they were deflecting balls away and knocking them away. Auburn made some careless passes. I felt like last night Texas really had to work to initiate their offense in the first half. Arkansas outscored them by, I think, a dozen in the first half. And then in the second half, Arkansas went back to their not being able to make shots ways, and I think they went from like 42 to 27 points, but they defended well. And even though Trey Johnson got hot and he missed 2 shots that would have won the game in the last minute, maybe Arkansas dodged a bullet, and sometimes you need to get a little bit lucky, and you'll take it. But, I do think they defend and they make you earn it offensively. And I don't know if a tighter rotation helps. They don't foul a ton when they only have 6, 7, 8 guys on the floor, but they still find a way to play hard. And I think they can frustrate some teams. Clearly, they held Auburn to a point total that you ought to be able to win that game if you can make a few shots and you can score. And they didn't do it. But they did score a few more last night, and they kept Texas, for the most part, I think, for about 30 minutes from being able to do much offensively.
Red, do you think there's a team, when you look, who's your 4 seeds, your 4 number 1 seeds right now? Because I don't see a team like UConn the last couple of years where you're like, hey, man, this is the team, and they're going to win it, and it's really not even close. I think it's a little more wide open this year. I do have Auburn and Duke. Those would be 2 of my 4 number 1 seeds. Who are your 4 number 1 seeds right now?
I would probably put Tennessee. I might rephrase that. I would put Houston in that mix. I think they're playing hard enough where I think if they can end up winning their conference tournament, that might be a good selection. Florida was kind of moving up my list pretty fast, and then they throw a stinker out there too. So I think if you had to go now, you'd obviously put Auburn out there. Duke would probably get some consideration, although I think their quad 1 wins is a different story compared to the competition they face in their conference, but I think at least they've earned it. But I think Houston's probably one of those teams that might find its way in that mix too.
I like Houston. I think I'd throw Alabama back up there right now.
They might have to be.
Auburn, yep. Duke, Houston, Alabama would be my 4 now.
I think that's good, but I do think we're going to be in this mix where maybe from 3 to 12, as far as the rankings, might really get kind of jostled up a bit. And I don't know if you'll go by just what teams have done in the last 2 or 3 weeks or whether you'll have to reevaluate the total. But I don't know if there's a ton of difference between maybe 4 and 12 or 5 and 11. So I still think there's a lot of jockeying to accomplish here the next couple of weeks, probably even into and through the conference tournaments.
Brett, it's just a couple of weeks. What do you make of baseball so far? They've started very well.
They have started well. A few guys, I guess, Phil, that really excite me, and Zach Roots one. I wish I would have been able to see his performance like you did in Arlington. I think we got a glimpse of that against Washington State, but to do it in that venue against tougher competition, I think was pretty exciting. I think we're seeing some glimpses that Logan Maxwell is getting healthy and can be a middle-of-the-lineup guy. Kahio Aloy, though, has to be the most fun I've had watching anybody. When you have 4 hits all in excess of 106 or 107 miles an hour, I mean, it's hard to hit a ball that hard, but to do it 4 times in a game and get hits, I mean, I was pretty excited about that. And, the continuing development of Iredale at third base. So, they've got to kind of figure out that first and second base position, whether it's by platoon or not. And I still think there's probably a little refinement in the 8th and 9th inning roles in the bullpen. But, this is a get-well stretch, Phil. I don't know if we're going to learn a ton in the next 9 games or so, considering the non-conference opponents. But, I would anticipate them kind of being in a spot we thought they were last year with only a couple of jobs to kind of figure out and a few more roles to refine. But certainly a lot of talent. And I've enjoyed watching the newcomers.
Yeah, it's about getting in a good mindset now, because after this next weekend, then you have just one to go until you finally start SEC play. So you really got to get into the right mindset. Did you see Florida and Stetson from a couple of days ago? Florida won the game. I think it was 6-1. And Stetson played the game under protest because of a disagreement of a call at first base they use an orange extra base. We use a green extra base at Bowen Walker, but in Stetson, it's an orange base. And there was question as to whether or not their runner used the right base. If the fielder goes to the orange base, the runner has to go to the white base. They played it under protest, though, and I know how that works in Major League Baseball. The protest goes to the commissioner's office, and it's all decided by the commissioner. I could see within the SEC, it's all decided by the person who handles all of the rules for umpires in the SEC. But for a non-conference game with Stetson in Florida, like to play the game under protest, I have no idea who it is that makes this decision as to whether or not the protest is upheld. There is no commission.
I don't know either. I don't know. I would imagine there's probably a consortium of the umpires that handle some of the issues, and maybe that's the case. I'm glad you brought that up, because we had an ESPN baseball conference call this week, one of like 10 I've been on, and they talked about some interpretation issues, and Mike Rooney of D1 Baseball and ESPN was asking if it was the Arkansas game, and I don't know the full context of that with the base and the touching it in Arlington, but he mentioned it was the Stetson game. So that was the one that they brought up on our big call. So we were supposed to get a clip from it. I haven't seen that clip yet, but I'm with you. I don't know who exactly would make that decision unless it's the crew chief of all the umpires that handles that league, or the league in which the game was played. But it seemed like that would be a bureaucratic volleyball back and forth between people who don't have to make that decision.
The play that he's referring to with Arkansas was in the TCU game when Cam Kozel turned a 3-6-3 double play while tripping and falling and then crawling back to first base. He was practically sitting on both bases. But the umpires, I think, said that there was a piece of the white base for the runner to go to. And since he'd caught the ball, the play's over. It's a forced play, so it's over. And by the way, that was the first day in Cam Kozel's life he ever played first base. And to have to turn a 3-6-3 in the first day you've ever played it, like Bubba always says, and you find this to be right, Bubba, the ball will find you when you're playing your first game at a position.
There's no doubt. In fact, in TV, we have fun when there's a defensive replacement late. We say, well, the ball's going to be going to him, and a number of times we'll introduce a new right fielder, and the ball will be a fly ball on the chalk down the line, and he's running into a fence or a tarp or something. It feels like it happens all the time, like the baseball gods get their amusement out of having a line drive come to somebody who's just entered the game.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.